He was just a few weeks away from being a first-time dad, but he'll never have the chance to meet his child after a sucker punch to the head caused a brain injury. We'll explain what police say happened, as 5 people have now been charged in connection to his death. This is Inside the Crime, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. We're in Scottsdale, Arizona for this crime, and what first began as an argument outside of a local bar later turned into a homicide investigation. TJ Pizzitola and his wife seemed so excited to expand their family. He even posted this on his Facebook page back in June: "Getting ready for our next big adventure. Could not be happier that my best friend, my amazing wife, is blessing our family by carrying our first child and making our family a little bit bigger. Get ready for the next Pizzitola, coming late fall 2025. It's such a heartbreaking post in hindsight, because 4 months later, TJ was dead. His wife is now a widow, and he never got the chance to meet his bundle of joy. According to Scottsdale police, around 2 a.m. on October 11th, they were called outside of Patty's First Avenue Lounge. Patty's is a bar and lounge, and TJ was there with a small group of friends. While they were waiting for their rideshare, an argument began with another group of people. That argument escalated to fists coming out. TJ was punched during the argument, and he later died from his injuries. There were no arrests in the case for nearly 2 weeks, but police said it was a homicide investigation, as the Maricopa County Office of the Medical Examiner worked to determine TJ's cause of death. Investigators got a huge break in the case on October 23rd, when they announced 5 people were in custody in connection to TJ's death: 24-year-old Drew Meneses, 27-year-old Julius Husser, 23-year-old Mark Whitford, 26-year-old Tony Becker, and 27-year-old Krista Molina. Court records reviewed by AZ Family revealed a lot more. Police say TJ and his friends were dropped off at Patty's just before 10 p.m. on October 10th. Then he and his friends jumped around to 2 other bars before later returning to Patty's between 1:30 a.m. and 1:45 a.m. Court documents, according to the outlet, reveal that TJ and his friends were, quote, being unruly and obnoxious to the other customers, so staff asked security to remove them. TJ and his friends reportedly had to be escorted out of the bar, and security asked them not to return that night. Patty's staff also called Scottsdale police, and by the time the officers arrived, no one was arrested because at that point, no crime was committed. So TJ and his friends were free to go. 30 minutes later, everything changed. Officials say while TJ and his friends were waiting for their rideshare, one of them bumped into a woman who was later ID'd as Krista Molina. The unnamed friend reportedly apologized and continued walking away, but court documents reveal Krista began arguing with one of them, and an argument broke out between TJ's group of friends and the friends that Krista was with, which were Drew Meneses, Mark Whitford, Julius Husser, and Tony Becker. When TJ and his friends began walking towards their rideshare pickup, they were followed by the group, and police say Drew took it a step further. He allegedly ran up behind TJ, punched him, and he was knocked unconscious. TJ fell to the concrete pavement, hitting his head and neck. According to the prosecutor, that single punch caused TJ to have brain injury so severe he went down completely unconscious and never recovered. While laying unconscious, the 4 men reportedly began attacking TJ's friends. According to prosecutors, cell phone video shows Drew punching one of the other victims in the face and torso. Then the 4 men ran away from the scene before police arrived back to the bar. Once police arrived, TJ was lying unconscious on the sidewalk. He had to be rushed to the hospital, but he was pronounced brain dead, and he later passed away from his injuries. TJ's wife, now widow, was left devastated by his death. She told Fox 10 Phoenix, "I texted him that I had gotten home, and he texted me back and said that he wished that I was there, but that he was so proud of me for staying home and taking care of our baby boy, and that he loved me. That was the last text I ever got from him." Around 3:30, I saw that his location changed to the emergency room and dropped everything and ran down there in my pajamas. I'm trying so hard not to be angry at this situation and try to be the strong woman that he thinks that I am. All he ever wanted to be was the best father ever and the best husband, but he wasn't finished. Loved ones put together a GoFundMe for TJ's widow, writing in the description, "On behalf of the Pizzitola family, I am sharing the hardest news of our lives. On the morning of October 11th, our precious TJ entered the gates of heaven at just 29 years old. He was the victim of an unprovoked act of violence that took his life far too soon. His passing has left a hole in our hearts and a future forever changed for his wife and their baby, who will arrive in just a few short weeks." Even in this unimaginable tragedy, TJ continues to give through organ donation, helping others live on through his generosity and spirit. Julius, Tony, and Mark were later booked into the Maricopa County Jail accused of aggravated assault. Krista Molina was taken to the Scottsdale City Jail accused of assault and disorderly conduct. Drew Meneses, however, faces the most serious charge, second-degree murder. He was also booked into the Maricopa County Jail. During his first court appearance, he appeared apologetic. According to AZ Family, he said, "It was a bad night, Things were not supposed to happen like that at all, and there was no malicious intent for that at all. Prosecutors say Drew had a prior felony conviction for a different violent crime, so the judge ordered he be held on a $1 million cash bond. Just a horrible case overall, and it really goes to show how bar fights have devastating consequences. I'm joined now by litigator Rich Schoenstein. Rich, thank you so much for joining me today. You know, this case went from an argument to fist flying to a homicide investigation. What's your reaction to this story, especially as TJ was just weeks away from being a first-time dad?
Well, it's a tragic case when somebody dies for no reason. And that's what this is. This is a stupid bar fight that spun out of control and sort of a freak accident. I mean, I think there's going to be a question here about the degree of culpability of the person who punched him in the back of the head. Obviously, I don't think he intended to cause death, but when you have that sort of physical altercation, this can be the result, and people have to be held responsible because of that.
Yeah. And what's your reaction to Drew Meneses being charged with second-degree murder? Do you see a possibility of that charge being upgraded or even possibly downgraded?
I don't think it'll be upgraded. I mean, to me, upgraded would be intentional murder, premeditated. And I don't think there's any way to look at this situation and say that he was planning to cause the death of the victim. But if it's a reckless act that he knew or should have known could cause either death or severe bodily injury, then he could be liable for second-degree murder. And that's what you have here, a vicious punch in the back of the head, a sucker punch with a lot of force. That can kill a person, and it appears to have done that here.
Yeah, and then Drew, he even reportedly said that this was a bad night, things weren't supposed to happen like this, but the judge still ended up giving him $1 million cash bond. Are you surprised by that?
No, I'm not surprised by that. There's a risk of flight also. I think he has some sort of prior. I don't think this is his first experience with law enforcement, and it is a pretty serious crime. So I'm not surprised there was a bond imposed, a significant bond imposed here.
Yeah. And the other suspects too, the other men that were involved as well as the other woman, the men are facing aggravated assault charges, whereas Krista Molina, and she's the person that was bumped into by TJ's friends, she's charged with assault and disorderly conduct. Are you surprised by those charges?
No, I don't know exactly who did what. We're going to have to hear all the facts and if this was to go to trial, testimony about exactly who did what. I'm sure there are people who are going to say they were retaliating, they didn't start it. I didn't start it is a pretty typical defense in this kind of situation. But they're all charged with some degree of assault, which seems appropriate to a bunch of people involved in a bar fight. We see a lot of them in the movies, but you really shouldn't be getting involved in bar fights. I mean, it's risky, it's juvenile, it's dangerous.
Yeah, and they have consequences like what we're seeing right now. Somebody is now dead. And how different do you think things would be if the five of them ended up staying on scene instead of leaving? Do you think that would have changed anything?
Well, I don't think it affects the aggravated assault charges, but I do think it makes the situation worse. If you're involved in any kind of altercation, in any kind of accident, in any kind of injury, it's important to stay on the scene until the authorities arrive, even if you didn't do anything wrong, even if you're just a witness. And if you leave before that, you are drawing attention to yourself, because why would you leave? So I think it's a bad move on their part. I don't know if it made their circumstances worse.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, while all of this was going on, when they, police hadn't arrested them by that point, I wonder, did they even know that TJ was dead? Did they even care? That kind of goes through my mind a little bit. And does it mitigate anything that they were probably drinking that night? I mean, we've seen cases and crimes happen before where people have been drunk, but does that mitigate anything in terms of, once this case does go before the courts?
So as a general matter, legally speaking, alcohol is not a defense. You don't have a defense to any crime because you were drunk or because you were high. you are responsible for your conduct even if you were inebriated.
Mhm.
I say that legally. In front of a jury, might a jury look at it differently? Might a jury look at this differently? They were at a bar, they were drinking, no one intended to hurt anybody. It's not like it was a brawl outside of somebody's house. I
Mhm.
think the reality of the situation is that a jury may look at that a little bit differently, but really they're not supposed to.
Mhm. And what's your reaction to police saying earlier in the night that staff reported that TJ and his friends were acting unruly before being kicked out of the bar? Legally, does that really change anything either?
It depends. If they're going to claim, for example, if they were going to claim self-defense,
Mhm.
it would be definitely relevant that they were being unruly and maybe getting into it with others inside the bar, because that would be an answer to the argument that they were only responding. So if they have some version of defense or of a he started it kind of defense, the fact that they were in earlier action, I think would be relevant.
And do you think that's what Drew's defense is going to go for? That this was in self-defense, that he acted in self-defense? I mean, he allegedly sucker punched him, meaning that he came up from behind him.
So so listen, to me, this case cries out for a negotiated resolution, right?
Mm.
This is a case where somebody did something that they shouldn't have done, that is horrible. It caused a death, but again, I don't think anybody thinks he was trying to kill him.
Mhm.
So it is a combination of a vicious act that shouldn't be tolerated and an accident. It has both of those elements. And because of that, the authorities are going to press second-degree murder, which is the highest they can come up with. And he's going to say he was innocent. Obviously, they should meet somewhere in the middle. He should plead to a lesser charge. He should negotiate some type of jail sentence. This is not a person who needs to go to jail for the rest of his life, probably. I don't know. You'd get a sentencing report. I don't obviously know all the aspects of this person's life,
Mhm.
but assuming he just has this one prior and this was an unintentional half accident, they
Mhm.
should negotiate something. He should take a plea, and they should never take this case to trial.
So, with that being said, how surprised would you be if this case goes in front of a jury?
I'll be surprised. My betting money would be that it gets resolved.
Mhm.
But there are cases that go to trial. There are defendants who say, I'm not serving a day in jail and I'm going to take my case to court. That happens all the time. There are prosecutors who say we can't negotiate. This is a second-degree murder and we need to press those charges. So I won't be blown away if it goes. If I had to bet, I would bet it would settle, but it could go to trial.
Yeah, and it really could. And that's what's so interesting about our legal system. You just never know. And in terms of how much the victim's family gets to say and whether or not there's plea negotiations for the defendants, how much of a say, if any, do they really get?
It depends on the jurisdiction. It depends on the prosecutors. It depends on the families. We've seen some high profile cases. You've been at this for a while now. You know it. We've seen some high profile cases where the authorities negotiated resolutions that some or all of the families weren't in agreement with.
Mhm.
So they don't have to sign off, right? That we don't let the families determine who we prosecute, what we prosecute them for, or how we resolve those matters, or for that matter, what judgment is at trial. We have prosecutors, we have judges, we have juries. All of those people are supposed to ensure that justice prevails or some semblance of it rather than the families. But I hope they get input. I hope they're listened to. I think the families really should have input, particularly if they're inclined towards some level of forgiveness. I
Mm.
think that should be credited. So I hope they get their say.
Yeah, and again, it's just a heartbreaking case overall because around this time, TJ should be celebrating the birth of what was going to be his baby son. And now, unfortunately, in addition to planning for the birth of their new child, they also have to plan for a funeral. And it's just devastating and heartbreaking overall. Rich Schoenstein, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case. I really appreciate it.
Well, Elizabeth, it's always great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Online records reveal Mark Whitford, Julius Husser, and Tony Becker were released from custody, and they are all required to wear an ankle monitor. Records reveal there is a status conference on this case scheduled for October 31st. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Inside the Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner.